Welcome to This Commerce Life. We are an unscripted podcast dedicated to small businesses and entrepreneurs in the retail and consumer packaged goods space in Canada and the United States.
I am Phil Chang, co-host and co-founder.
And I'm Kenny Benucci, co-host and co-founder of This Commerce Life.
Our love is the journey to retail, and our passion is sharing that with you every week. For the audience, we have Ted Fleming with us. He's the founder of Partake. They are a non-alcoholic beer, and they're super cool. I think every time we see you guys, we think about. So we've been very excited to do this podcast. Because we've been,
plus you also came highly recommended. I think we had about 20 people. We got to talk to him. Yeah,
we got to talk to Ted is kind of the thing. So we're excited to have you on. Thank you for doing this with us. The way we kind of work is we'd love to kind of hear a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you were, and then we'll definitely sprinkle questions. We probably got a lot of questions for you in between, and then we'll take this and see where it goes. So the next kind of 45 minutes are yours.
Awesome.
We'd love to hear how you get here. So with that, so welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Thanks, Kenny.
No, our pleasure.
So
tell us how you got started. Where do you come from? Why'd you end up here?
Yeah,
why did you go into retail? Seriously, you nothing else to do that day? What happened?
Yeah, my career actually it started in water treatment and then evolved into renewable energy for a number of years. And during that time, 2005, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and that was kind of a pretty big change in my life, albeit I was in denial about it for a number of years. And it kind of came to, I came to a fork in the road in 2010. I was starting to have some serious complications due to Crohn's, was hospitalized a few times, had a few surgeries, wasn't going in a direction I wanted career-wise. And, it was partially due to health reasons and feeling a bit forgotten about, just because I did have to miss a fair amount of work due to the surgeries and so on, and the recovery time. In that same year, 2010, I became a father for the first time. So that was a pretty big change in my life, and a real nudge towards, hey, how do you take better care of yourself? How do you prioritize health and wellness? And that was sort of the year where I kind of resolved to give up alcohol on a personal level before I started any businesses related to that. And a few years later, I thought, hey, I'm struggling with staying on this path I want to be on. I loved craft beer, but there's no such thing as non-alc craft beer. Even the sort of the macro style of beers, the lagers, very little in terms of variety at retail. And then if you went into food service on premise, you would be mocked and derided by staff even for even suggesting, do you have a non-alc beer? And, some places did have it. And, you'd have to take the dust off the top of the bottle, and you look at the best before date, and it was 3 years prior. And it was
garbage, even if it wasn't.
Right. And it was just an awful experience. And I recall there was one moment when I was out with my friends. We were at a bar. They all ordered the latest craft beers. And, I asked the server, okay, what do you have in the way of non-alc? And, the guy basically said, well, why don't you grow a pair and have a beer with your buddies? And, I think he was trying to be funny. It didn't go over that well with me at the time. But, part of that stuck with me. It's the question was well, why can't I have a craft beer with my friends, albeit in my case being sort of true to that health and wellness path that I was on. And that was sort of that one of those early seeds that eventually grew into the first iteration of my business, which was an online store. I started that in 2013. It was called premiumnearbeer.com. So it was actually the first non-alcoholic bottle shop in North America, and probably the second in the world, modeled after a business in the UK. I originally found that UK business online and started filling up my cart, and was pretty excited about all these new non-alc beers I'd be able to try. And obviously they said, okay, yeah, we don't ship outside the UK. So, solution was, hey, I'll start a North American version of that business. And, the worst case scenario, if it doesn't work out, I'll just have all this inventory to drink myself. So that was the first iteration of the business and how to solve the problem I was experiencing on a firsthand level. And that business actually was quite successful in its own right. I think we got up to maybe $500,000 in annual sales from the online business. And then, a few years in, I think the real value in that process for me was it was like product market fit. Is there a market for this? But it was really about community building for me. There were a lot of other people out there who were experiencing the same challenges I was, and just like, hey, I'm invisible as a consumer. No one cares about me as a non-alc consumer. People think, hey, if you drink non-alc, it's like water, juice, pop, you're good to go. And, most of us are like, okay, we don't want high sugar. We don't want artificial sweeteners. We want something that's more adult in nature. Having a water or a soda with people who are having beer just feels like makes you feel like you are an outsider. And so there was this community and demand for non-alcoholic beer, and I extended that into non-alc wines and ciders with the online store. But that community was super important in terms of they were my eyes and ears of new product to bring into that store, but they were also the ones who really pushed me into, Ted, can you get craft non-alc beer? And I'd go around to a bunch of breweries. I was living in Toronto at that time, and I said, hey, I've got this great community. I've got this channel that I've developed. Here are my sales. I want to create a craft non-alc beer. And essentially at that time, it was 2015. I basically got laughed out of a bunch of breweries. Ironically, some of those breweries today are, tooting their own horn about the non-alc beers they're launching. But in 2015, they basically told me I was an idiot. And so, that was sort of another sort of nudge for me. I take that as kind of, some of that negative feedback as motivation to do things. And I took that and created Partake a few years later and launched that in 2017.
But even at the time, were you be able to find okay, it's going to sound terrible because, well, it's not going to sound terrible because I had them in the past. At that time, a non-alc beer, non-alc wine, honestly, was pretty shitty. I mean, we're not going back 50 years. I'm talking 10 years ago. There was a lot of shite on the market. Really, it wasn't very good. So were you how are you sourcing this? I can't see that there was, oh my God, I've got this plethora of 800 people I can choose from. The pool couldn't have been that deep, right?
No, at retail, you might have seen 4 or 5 products,
right,
at a place that even carried non-alc beer. 2 of those products were probably control label,
right?
So just house brand, unbranded stuff. So yeah, part of the original problem I was trying to solve with the online store was that variety piece, right? You couldn't get a dark beer, you couldn't get a wheat beer, you couldn't get a sour. There's the only thing you could get in retail was a lager style, a European lager, or
what's it called? Europe, a Carlsberg or whatever. It wasn't a whole ton to choose from. I don't think there was anyway.
Yeah. So that was kind of the impetus. One of the solves was hey, there's just got to be that same kind of I want a stout when I'm drinking, having this meal. Right. I want to, I want this type of beer in this occasion. I want that variety that keeps beer interesting. And, for most craft beer consumers, it was the variety and the innovation and flavors and styles that really made craft beer dynamic at that time. And I wanted to have that same experience myself, and my customers wanted that same experience as well. So most of the products I brought into that first iteration of my business came from Europe. Today there's, tons more brands. So, a lot more variety on, that's easily accessible, but I really had to be, I had to work hard to get those brands. I think that's what I was going with, and get people to even to work with me as a business.
I can imagine. I guess that's what I was trying to figure out too. Is so sourcing, because I'm trying to. Okay, I can't remember yesterday or 10 years ago. I'm trying to go back in my head and think. Okay, what would I have seen on shelves somewhere, and I'm not seeing a lot like in my little brain here of what I can think of. I
Yeah,
know there's some European stuff, not probably much from the States, not much from here.
yeah,
So like
you
you
would have
really
seen,
got limited supply.
yeah, you would have seen like Beck's, you
Yeah.
would have seen O'Doul's, you would have
Yeah.
seen the store brands. That's kind of it. Like that was sort of the universe a non-alc
And you were still
consumer.
able to make a go out of it though, Ted. Like so people were still kind of trying to find your online store, and like even that was enough to get people shopping, I
Well,
guess.
I mean, look, the Becks and the O'Douls were pretty awful, right? So
But they were
if you
popular.
were
That's all you had.
well, no, that's all you had. So I think if you didn't have a choice, right, and it didn't occur to you to make your own brand,
Well, which I'm still not understanding, but
you know,
that's okay.
then that's what you would buy. But then there were a lot of us that went, yeah, I could be persuaded to do this, and then when you try, you go, no,
Yeah.
this is awful, right? If this is that world, then I'll just figure out how to nutritionally change other things I do so that I compensate for this, right? But um, yeah, no,
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's
I
kind
can,
of been a parallel path, right, in the evolution, and we can get into this, but you know, there wasn't great product. The only people that would buy the product because it wasn't great were people that had to, right? Like it was people
right.
like me that had a medical condition, or
Yeah.
they had challenges with addiction issues or religious reasons why they didn't consume alcohol at all. And you know, I think the really important shift that's happened over the course of my business and Partake in particular is, you know, once there started to be great product in the market, you know, as Phil was saying, like those consumers who were like, hey, I could be persuaded. I don't have to be in this category,
Yeah.
but if there's something good, I could be persuaded to come in. We're seeing a tidal wave of new consumers
Right.
who are like that, of like, hey, product's good, all the health and wellness benefits, low calories in the case of Partake, you know, great taste. There's the variety now as well. So, you know, you can pretty much get any style of non-alc beer, you know, that you could in craft. So, you know, a lot of these things have changed, and now you're seeing the mass, maybe not mass adoption quite yet, but certainly early adopters from that new group of consumers who are, hey, I'm choosing to be in this category. I don't have to be, but I'm choosing to be because of all these great reasons.
Very cool. Okay, so let's back it up. So like you've got the little store, online store, you're starting to do well, and then a light goes on in your head and you figure I'll just I'll become a brewery of non-alcoholic beers.
Yeah, some of the challenges in the online store, I had challenges growing my business into the US. So I didn't have any label control, which, as you guys
Right.
know,
Makes
we're in
sense.
CPG. It's pretty important to have the right labels for the right countries.
Yeah.
Again, like the big brewers didn't believe in the category. They wouldn't work with me on these types of things, albeit now they're, you know, they call themselves champions of the category, but that's another story. Um, yeah, so I had challenges growing that business for a variety of reasons. We were also like shipping product across the country in the middle of winter, and you know, maybe not in Vancouver, but certainly where I am in the prairies, temperatures can get
Yeah,
pretty
cold
chilly,
storage.
and people don't appreciate frozen product or
Yeah.
shattered glass. So there are definitely some challenges with that business, and you know, ultimately I saw, you know, a solution to those challenges in having my own brand where I could control the label. I had a lot of US customers who would, you know, similar to my experience with that UK store. They'd find my website, they'd fill their cart, they'd go to checkout. It was like, sorry, can't ship to the US. And I'd get like these very hostile emails about
Happiness.
why I couldn't ship to the States. And so, you know, one of the promises I made to my early Kickstarter backers and backers of Partake was like, this will be available in the US online, hopefully retail at some point, which we are today. But you know, those were two of the biggest challenges for that store. And so, you know, I was getting the feedback from the community around, hey, this is a product, and you know, craft beer is something we'd love to see in non-alc. No one would work for me. There were challenges with the online business and being able to scale that. And so it became an obvious time to kind of try to solve the non-alc craft
Right.
problem. And so I got to work on that. I had a friend who was a very accomplished home brewer. He and I kind of put our heads together a little bit, it actually came out of a bit of a dare. We were at a bar after playing sports, and he was telling me about all these homebrew awards he was winning, and I a little tongue in cheek said, well, if you're really good, you'd be able to make a non-alc craft beer with me. And so, I had to pay him a few flats of beer to pay him for his time, but we ended up with at least a prototype after I would have to say quite a few iterations that went down the drain and were thoroughly awful, but all part of the trial and error process, and eventually got to something that was, we said, hey, this actually isn't bad. We were able to get some R&D grants because what we were doing was quite innovative at that time. Got some professional help to kind of commercialize the recipe, and did a little Kickstarter campaign that I had a $10,000 goal for that. We reached that in 3 hours. So again, that community I had built over the previous years, with
people were waiting for you.
They came en masse. Credit to me that I did a lot of the pre-work to kind of make sure that happened. We ended up raising $30,000 against that $10,000 goal, which was quite nice. And we actually had some consumer, like this one story really stands out for me in my journey. Is I had this one guy call me up and he said, Ted, like the first product we were trying to make was an IPA because it's the king of craft beer, highest sales per any style. And it was also a bit of a challenge saying, hey, if I can make IPA, I can make a bunch of other styles of non-alc beer. And he said, I hate IPA. However, I will still buy 10 cases from you and support this Kickstarter because what you're doing, you're the only one who's kind of championing this category. I know you'll eventually go on to make styles I like, and so I'll support you. I'll give it all away to friends of mine who like IPA. But that story stuck with me in terms of how unique I was in terms of what I was trying to do and who I was working on behalf of.
Wow.
The Kickstarter is interesting because I think every founder thinks about that at some point in their lives, and then I've seen lots of people kind of scratch their heads and then walk away because they don't quite know how this works, and then there are a whole bunch of people that never really stop looking at it. What made you go Kickstarter route, and then was it crazy? Like, what can you talk about that process a little bit?
Sure. So, a lot of the work had to be done up front, had to get the brand concept done, how to create, actually, it might be worth a step back. Like a Kickstarter, there is such a thing as equity crowdfunding today where people give you money, but as equity into your business. Kickstarter is not that. It's a product-based platform. So people would essentially pre-purchase a product or concept on spec. So, we had, images of the beer cans, but we didn't have the physical beer cans. We hadn't brewed the beer yet. Still a lot of risk in the project, but, we did a good job getting some PR around it. We mobilized our own group. So, getting to our goal within the first 3 hours, allowed us to get on their top performers page, which allowed the Kickstarter network to have visibility into the project. If you don't do that, you're never going to get the Kickstarter audience eyeballs. I think a lot of people go into a Kickstarter or other crowdfunding platform thinking they'll get the eyeballs of the platform, but unless you do the work ahead of time and make sure you win with their algorithm, you're not going to get those eyeballs. You have to bring your own community first, and that will elevate you to the eyeballs of that platform's community. So we did that, and I think we probably got half our dollars from our existing community and half our dollars from the broader Kickstarter community, or people that we brought in through the PR that we were doing, and being able to within the first week say, oh yeah, we launched a Kickstarter, we hit our goal within 3 hours. It's made it onto the top performing page. It's number 3 in food and beverage. That all helped get additional PR as well. So success breeds success everywhere in life, but on those platforms especially too.
Still pretty fascinating that you didn't have anything. Like I can bet on you, no problem, right? But we're talking a category that really didn't exist. The stuff out there wasn't very good. So you put a diagram of a potential can. I'm tasting a potential beer that potentially tastes decent. Like, you know what I mean? Like, still, that's pretty, come on. I mean, the stuff you're selling was what you were selling because there wasn't much left. And now you throw, big deal. You throw a picture up of something that might happen or might not even know what the hell it tastes like. And you
Yeah.
got people to line up for it. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Again, that it helped that I had built, some reputation with the community I had, and their support kind of was like, okay, for that marginal person, they're like, okay, this project's funded. It's going to go ahead.
Yeah. If
It's
anybody's going to
obviously
do it, this guy's going to do it.
exactly. Yeah. So I think, and I think that was, that's part of the message from the gentleman who sent me that note about like, okay, I'm going to support you. No, just because I believe in the mission, and
Right.
I don't even like, even if you get the product done, I don't want it. I don't want this particular
I'll
style.
wait for the beer I want.
Yeah. And there, you know what, there were so many challenges, and like, hey, I got $30,000. Now what do I do?
Well, that's the next question I was going to ask. Like $30,000 first off is not a lot per se. I mean, you learn pretty quickly about MOQs, and you learn pretty quickly about food safety and food science. So like that's great that you and your buddy make something small batch at home. Like, how do you commercialize this now? Like, what do you do? I mean, you got 30 grand to get something to play with, I guess, but what are you doing now? Running around Toronto or Calgary or wherever you're at, just looking for someone?
Yeah, it's funny. We were able, like I said earlier, we were able to get some R&D funding from the government, and work with a local college to professionalize and commercialize the recipe. So when we went to breweries, it wasn't just like Ted and Joe's homebrew recipe that we're trying to scale.
Right.
It was actually scaled with guys who had used to work for Labatt's and Molson. So like people with reputations at the large scale. So that helped a lot when we went to brewers, and they said, okay, this has been vetted by, from a food safety perspective, as well as like, okay, this is how you would run this recipe through a commercial sized brewery.
Right.
So it de-risked a lot of that. So when we had those conversations, we weren't looked at as a fly by night operation as much as maybe we would have been without that. Our first brews commercially actually happened in East Van.
Who did it for you here?
There was a company called Factory Brewing.
Okay.
I think they've since been out of business for a few years, but they were just starting up at the same time as we were doing our recipe. They were looking for clients. They were, I guess, essentially they were willing to take the risk because they were not at capacity to work with us. And to be honest, the first iteration, the first batch they made for us, didn't turn out right. As it turned out, after some debate about what happened, there was a number transcribed incorrectly from what we provided them onto their brew sheets, which had a material impact on the beer. So that was probably a critical moment for me in the business. Was I was given, and it's funny, I saw someone on LinkedIn today with like this similar type of problem of like, okay, co-packer produces your product, you've paid for it, you have no leverage as a new business for payment terms or any stuff like that. You have nothing to fall back on, and it's like, here's your product, we did a great job, pat ourselves on the back, co-packer, and then you're like, this is not my beer.
I don't know what you made me here, but it's not mine.
And they're
why does it look like jam? I don't understand, right?
I'm like, here's the prototype, and here it is. Like, do these look the same?
No, follow the recipe. That's what you made. That's yours.
Yeah. So after quite a bit of back and forth, they admitted that, oh yeah, we made a mistake. But the challenge for me was like what to do, right? Like, I had this beer that was paid for. I could have just shipped it out to all my Kickstarter backers. We were already delayed. Most crowdfunding campaigns in terms of execution are, a year delay is not uncommon.
Right.
We were a couple months delayed. And so I was under pressure to kind of get something out the door to the backers. And I made the decision. I can't send this out and say that this is what this is the product I promised them. So what I did was I emailed all the backers and I said, hey, look, I know we're delayed. We had our first batch done. It didn't come out the way I had intended and what our spec was. However, it's a very hoppy beer, and if you like very hoppy IPAs, I'm willing to send it to you. It's food safety wise, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's just not. I'm not going to send this out and tell you that this is what I promised you.
Right.
And again, the community came back and supported me. I think I moved half that product of people who just put up their hand and said, yeah, send me that super hoppy version. We did the next batch, they got it right the second time, sent that to the rest of the people. They were happy. And it's funny, there were a lot of people that, for years were like, hey, send me that first batch that was like a punch in the face of hops, right? And we eventually came back with some hoppier versions of our beer, but that was just a tricky time to navigate with virtually no business at that time, no leverage with our co-packer.
Right.
A first production run that went awry. Pretty pivotal moment for me in the business. It almost, the business almost didn't survive its first week, essentially.
And this is
what you said. It feels like a lot of weight, right? Like it's a lot of weight, right? Because all you're working off is your word, right? Like people have given you money, you've spent it.
You've promised something that you can't deliver.
Very weighty.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, there's no more money. No one's going to give me more money for this, right? If you can't get the first thing off the ground. So you definitely have some sleepless nights where you're thinking, is this thing dead in the water before it's even off the ground?
Okay, so this is 2015, right? Ish.
That was 2017.
2017. So so what happens now though? So like, you're not in retail yet. Like right now it's still servicing sort of the Kickstarter community. I'm assuming you're doing some online stuff. People know who you are because you've been doing it for years. You finally have something cool for them to drink. Like, I'm assuming that's the play.
Yeah. So I built that channel, that online store. So it was really like, hey, I'm just pushing product through that channel. And then, I starting to sell into bars and restaurants, small independent accounts. I was living in Toronto at the time. So kind of working sort of my neighborhood accounts, small independent retailers, which were getting good traction. And then, the first big break for us came in 2018. So Budweiser launched their Budweiser Prohibition non-alc product in Ontario. The beer store is owned by like the large brewers, Labatt's, Molson, Sleeman, and some others. And there was someone on the board who represented craft brewers, and I was the only game in town from a craft non-alc beer game. And they're like, okay, they're opening up non-alc beer in the beer store. There should be a craft player. You're it. Putting your name into the beer store. We got a listing there, and we outsold, all the big name brands, 2-1. So, that opened up a lot of eyeballs for us. The LCBO then opened up non-alc beer within their stores. Again, we outsold, the big brands combined in those stores, and then that opened up the grocery retail landscape for us. So I think the beer store was definitely the first big door to open for us. The LCBO was probably the most influential because they are the largest beverage alcohol buyer in the world, and being able to do business for them, when you're talking to a Loblaws or a Sobeys, they're like, okay, you guys can execute with a world-class retailer, with a lot of standards, that makes you a lower risk bet to work with them.
Yeah. Wow. Good for you, man.
Wow.
And timing is everything, right? I guess you line
being in, like doing the work and then kind of making the moment happen, right?
Yeah.
Really, like that's kind of wow.
You sort of almost create your own luck, right? You get things going, you see a trend and you catch it. But I mean, that's pretty impressive because.
But were you were you ready for it, or were you looking for it at that point? Or, you know, because you're ticking along, you've created a community, you you take a risk, you get through the Kickstarter bit, you are now making this stuff, and you've got your own line, your kind of own online kind of channel happening. So when the LCBO thing, or sorry, the beer store thing happens, are you are you are you did you want that, or did you kind of look at that? You know what I mean? Because like, I think the natural instinct is for everyone to go, well, fuck yeah, I'm in, right? But then if you've got your own online, like the costs are different, you know, like all of the
It's a whole
things that
different
we talked
world.
about, it's a whole different world. Now you're dealing with suppliers, you're dealing with invoices and all this stuff that
Long-term
you don't have to
AR.
do. Um, were you looking for it, ready for it? Or was it kind of like a nice surprise that you had to kind of readjust to?
Yeah, I think, going back to the online store, right? Like another aspect of it, I mentioned a few of the challenges. Another aspect was margin, right? So we were essentially a retailer. We didn't have the wholesale margin. We didn't have the manufacturer's margin. So owning our own brand allowed us more margin. So we were able to play in that retail space. Did I get my pricing right off the bat? No. Did I understand, the margin expectations at various parts of the supply chain? No. All things we figured out in time, but
Yeah.
I had an advisor who's, one of his sayings is, sales solves all problems. So,
Yeah.
we had great velocities. We had great sales for an emerging brand. We were the only craft player in our space as a first mover. We were allowed a few, do-overs on certain things that, brands entering the space now, I don't think would be allowed those things, but because we were first to market, we were, and we had a great story behind the brand, and we're a small supplier. I think we were allowed a few do-overs in some cases. By the time we got to those big retailers, I think we had a lot of things ironed out. Not everything, but the big things. And I think also, I started the business with also, that look to Europe for inspiration, and like markets in Europe from a non-alcoholic beer perspective, like 5% of Europe, of like UK, Germany, 5% of their beer markets are non-alc beer. Spain, it's over 10%. In North America, we were less than 0.5%. So, one of my theories was that North America would eventually get to that same penetration rate as at least UK and Germany, if the right products were in the market, right? I don't think if you build it, they will come is a great business strategy, but I think with
It's
it,
ballsy.
like,
Ted, I'm shocked. What are you?
Yeah, it's ballsy. I mean, it does work at times, as you can prove, but it's nutsy.
Yeah, but at least with the European context, there was
Right.
there was a template for,
Yeah.
okay, this actually works in a developed market
Yeah.
because X, Y, and Z, and we need to create X, Y, and Z conditions in North
Yeah.
America, which are starting to happen. So my goal was, I anticipated there being larger demand for non-alc beer in North America. I don't think I probably would have done it, just because it was like personally meaningful to me, which is probably why we got through a lot of the early crap and challenges that come with an early stage business. But I've always tried to keep that that early consumer, the person that kind of looks like me, who has to be in the category, in mind when I made some decisions about market expansion. And I that customer base was saying, I'd love it for this product to be in the LCBO or the beer store or my local grocer. Like, I've always had people saying, I'd love it just to be ubiquitous and have like access at my local
Just make
store.
it easy.
So that's been a driver for me to change the category, is just,
Interesting.
there was the taste, there is the variety. We've solved those things. Okay, now it's the accessibility piece that we've done a great job in Canada. We're still working on it in the US, and there's some other companies that are helping us from a category perspective on that front as well. So it's always been something that I've wanted to expand, and it's because the consumers want that.
Wow.
Such a cool.
Good for you, man. Because it's not as you learn pretty quickly. CPG retail is really not. It in theory it looks very easy, and it really should be easy. You make it, you put it on a shelf, you sell it, you repeat. They just don't. There's a lot of shit in the middle that really makes the game interesting.
Yeah, we certainly, I hear from a lot of entrepreneurs about the challenges with distributors. We have different challenges with distributors in the US than we do in Canada, but I think that's, for an early stage entrepreneur, that's a piece of the industry that is, very opaque to new entrepreneurs.
Totally.
And like, it's like, okay, I make a product, I sell a product, whether I'm selling it at a farmer's market or, direct to a store. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, if I want to scale, I need distribution. All right, that costs money.
Yeah. Did you build it in? So,
Well,
yeah.
I also, sorry, Kenny.
No, go.
But I also think like you don't ever anticipate that a retailer would also try and make it harder for you, right? Because they're trying to make money on it. But you get to complicated places where, they go, you are the size you are now, but in the early days, somebody would have said to you, look, you're just too small. I don't really care. I don't want to deal with Ted, right? So I already deal with, XYZ distributors or XYZ brokers. So if you go through those guys, I'll deal with you. And you're going, wow, that just cost me like another 15 points that I never intended. I'm trying to put that in my pocket. Like what? Right? Like all these things that just make life so much more complicated along the way.
Yeah, we went through that early COVID where we were trying to build our business in the US through some direct relationships with retailers, which we'd already established two really strong direct selling relationships with retailers, and then COVID hit, and pretty much every retailer said no, that business model
It's over.
Forget it.
Yeah.
Put it on a truck that's already coming to our door, and
Right.
we'll talk. So I get how that's a driver for a lot of retailers because they want to keep things simple. I think if you get over a certain threshold in terms of size, like, okay, maybe the dollars start making sense for the retailer to do things more directly, but that involves its own logistics, like an overhead for you as a business as well. So the distributor gets paid for doing what they do, but they also handle some of the overhead that you would have to internalize if you wanted to do it direct.
Yeah. Well, for each side, it depends which side you're on. There's AR, there's AP. It's great to do direct, but I don't want to, necessarily sell to 1,000 stores myself. That's a lot. It's, I'd rather sell to one or two people and let them sell to the 1,000. There's a cost to it, and then all it is, do you have it built in or not? And I guess what you learned as well is you probably didn't have it built in because you don't realize that 30 here, 20 here, 25 there, 15 here, like the percentages come at you a mile a minute, right?
Yeah. And I at least, this isn't our direct experience as much as I hear it from other entrepreneurs is bill backs and some other hidden fees that are much harder to model from an early stage perspective. Those are some challenging conversations as well.
Yeah.
Kenny, I interrupted you. You had another question.
No, I don't remember
what it is.
No, I have no clue. No clue.
What comes next on this? Like you've got some wicked flavors out here. You've got some pretty serious distribution going. You're in the US now. Like what's next for Partake?
You just prompted me here, Phil. I gotta have a beer. It's beer time. So yeah, this is our peach goza. So we have 6 SKUs that are sort of in retail. We've made around 20 different styles over our lifetime. A lot of that new innovation goes through our own website, which is drinkpartake.com. So we're always bringing out new flavors, new styles, probably 5 to 6 times a year on that. And then we're kind of evolving our core retail set, not quite as quickly, but once a year we kind of do a reassortment of the core that goes into retail. In Canada, I think this is something unique to us in the world, is that we're the number one brand in our category. I'm not just talking craft non-alc beer. I'm talking non-alc beer full stop. So including the biggest beer brands in the world. I don't think there's any other market in the world where a challenger brand has attained that. So, kudos to the team for getting that done over the
Oh,
last couple of years. And, I think that's a combination of, we were first to market, my story behind the brand, my drive for the brand and for the category in the early days. The product's fantastic.
you
We've
make a
won.
good product. Tell you right now, that's the kicker, because the rest doesn't matter if you got a shitty product. So you're obviously doing the right things.
Yeah, appreciate it. Like even back in 2018, so like our first full year in business with Partake, our second product that we ever launched, which was our pale ale, that won the World Beer Award gold medal for the best non-alcoholic beer in the world, and that was a springboard to new retail placements as well. We've since gone on to win, I don't know, we've got like 30 some odd awards across the globe for the taste of our product. And I think what's unique to us is like we do that in this like 10 to 30 calorie format across all our products, which most non-alcoholic beers are lower in calories than our alcoholic cousins. An alcoholic beer is probably around 140 calories per 12 ounce 355 mil serving. Non-alc beer is often like 70 to 80. We're 10 to 30. So I think when people are looking at, hey, I'm thinking about going into the non-alc beer category, we meet them on taste, we meet them on variety with like the 20 plus types of beer we've made and the six that we have in pretty wide distribution in retail. And then, that calorie piece, a lot of people are coming
in beer belly.
Yeah, a lot of people are coming into non-alc because of health and wellness reasons, and they're like,
sure.
hey, I can check the calorie bucket too. So I think that's why we're having the success that we're having. And then we're trying to translate that into the US. It's a different go-to-market strategy. It's a much bigger market, different distribution.
They use distributors
challenges.
A lot down there.
Yeah. So we're distributed alongside with like beer distributors. So like beer truck going to the corner store or the retailer, like we're on that truck. So in some ways it's pretty challenging because it goes state by state, and then in some states it goes county by county. So we might need 4 or 5 different distributors to cover one state. Other states we have one distributor covers the whole state. So it's a little bit more complex from that perspective. We're number 2 in non-alc craft in the US, but lots of room to run in that market for us for sure.
Good for you, man. Wow. Good for
Fantastic.
you. And so you're obviously Canadian made. Are you making in Calgary? Like, do you have your own facility now, or are you still?
We've made product in Vancouver. Like I said, we've made some product in Calgary. Toronto's kind of our core Canadian production location. We've just added a brewery in the US in Cincinnati. So starting to make, as we grow our business there, starting to make product there. So, I think to the degree that we can be local, we'll try to be, but there's also, economies of scale are a big piece of keeping prices, competitive and value for consumers. I think that's another area where we've really excelled, where we took some of those early learnings from like how do you price the product. We need to keep our own margins healthy, but also like provide a fair price to consumers at the retail shelf. And I think we've done as good a job as anyone else in the category. Our price is more or less line price with the macro varieties, and you usually see a premium for craft, and we're pretty close to the macros.
Good for you. Good for you.
Amazing. I'm sad. We're almost out of time here. This has been amazing. I guess before we run away, like, so if people want to find you and all that, so Partake, you gave us the website earlier. Let me just make sure I got it right. And I'll put it in the, it's drinkpartake.com. Partake is Partake. And then if they want to find you, Ted, what's the, like, LinkedIn the best place to find you, or where else do they?
Yeah, LinkedIn's the best place. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I find that to be a great platform for meeting new people and new opportunities.
And then I think we put in a new rule as well, as if you want to talk to Ted, you got to take a picture with a Partake. Right. So
I can live with that rule.
If you send a
I like
LinkedIn
that rule.
message,
it's a good rule.
if there's no you with an open Partake bottle,
sorry,
you may not get an answer.
Yeah,
is kind of
might be dicey.
Might happen there. right?
Yeah, I like that. That's a good filter.
Yeah.
Why not?
Ted, thank you. This
That was
feels
awesome, man. Like
way
seriously, I
too
think
short,
well, it's a
but
great story.
thank you for this. And then I think the one thing as you launch and you get more new news,
Or if you want to talk about the
launching
new SKU that
summer,
you got
yeah,
coming,
anything like that, shoot us back a note. We'd love to record a short one with you and throw it up on YouTube as well, so that way some of your fans get another look at any new news that you might be doing as well.
Sure. Well, like the big thing for us this year was late last year we did a rebrand on our packaging, still the same brand name Partake, which I think is pretty well liked and pretty appropriate to the category and why people choose to get into non-alc and relates back to my reasons for being in the category. But yeah, we did a refresh of the brand last year. It's been really well received, and yeah, excited about some new stuff coming down the pipe related to that too. So maybe when we get that done, we can do an update.
Definitely hit us back, and we'll definitely get you back on, because that'd be amazing.
Or if you want to talk about how the States is going or whatever, or just catch up. That's fascinating. It's a great story. I mean, good on you, man. Like that's really impressive. Like seriously, that's wow. That's a tough category. Well, there wasn't no category really, which made it even more interesting.
Yeah, it was both easier and tougher at the same time.
Yeah, white space always looks easy until you get into white space, and then it's just white space.
And then you lament about how white it is, right? Because you're just like,
it's
why
tough.
Is there nobody else in this space? I don't understand.
Good for you. That's
good for
incredible.
Yeah. Thanks.
Well,
Ted.
thanks, guys. It was a pleasure talking to you. Look forward to meeting in person at an event.
Yes.
Are you doing CHFA?
I'm going to be out of the country. I think my team might be there, but yeah, the CHFA West is always tough for me because my kids have March break that same week.
Okay. Well, maybe sit the East.
Family.
Okay. All right.
Awesome. Take care, man. It was thanks, nice Ted. Meeting you. Thank you, by the way, too.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Take care.
Bye.
Okay, Chang, you gonna stay on for a second?
Yep. I can sign off, guys.
You can go, man. Yeah, do your day. That's awesome.
Okay, thanks.
Ted.
Take care, buddy.
Okay. Bye.
It's pretty incredible. Like
Yeah.
I mean that was as white space as you were going to get at the time.
And he's so nonchalant about it.
No, he made it sound so easy, and it's not. I honestly,
yeah.
What non-alcohol beer or wine would you want to drink 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, good for him. Oh, we gotta go. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.